Next up, we are talking about how to hack your air. And I've got a couple experts on this panel for you at the Biohacking Conference. The first is David Milburn. He spent 10 years solving some of the world's worst air quality problems for clients, from aerospace manufacturing, where one tiny bit of dust equals a fiery satellite coming back down to the Earth. So you really have to get that stuff clean. Or even if you could contaminate Mars with bacteria if you don't get it all the way there, all the way up to hospitals in Brooklyn with the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So a guy who knows his air. He's part of the executive team at Hypoallergenic Air, which is a company that uses technology that replicates the natural way that Mother Nature cleans our air, but with engineering. And I don't know if she uses some other process that is a lot like engineering. Anyway, he's worked with business owners, homeowners, people like you and me, biohackers, to improve the quality of indoor air. So whether you want your bedroom, your kitchen, your place of work to really do it, this guy's a serious expert. The other one is Dr. Ann Shippey, who's a physician and an author, and she specializes in environmental toxicity, preconception and reproductive wellness, and mold exposure. And as you guys know, because you're biohackers and you know my stuff, mold is a major air quality issue that pops up no matter your economic place in life. You can have a brand new building, you can have an old building. It's an equal opportunity sort of predator of human wellness. And what Ann does, she designs specialized treatments and protocols using epigenetics. So if you think of your body's job is to take air and food and make electrons that power everything you do, I think this panel is going to be important for you, because it's exactly that. And we never talk about air, at least not enough. And Ann, as an MD and a chemical engineer, is uniquely qualified to talk about this, both from the tech side and the wellness side. And she lived it herself in order to fix it. So that's what we're going to talk about. Guys, welcome to the panel.
Happy to be here.
I love doing these panels because they're a little bit faster than a podcast. And we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people watching right now. So let's just dive right in on this. These invisible things, bacteria, virus, pollen, mold, volatile organics, and all that. Let's talk first about the general, how do we get stuff out of air? Like, what are the particle sizes that matter? David, you want to take the lead on that?
I mean, as far as particle sizes, so those would be the actual physical pieces of material. A lot of times we don't think about these things. So we wouldn't really consider a virus so much as a particle, even though it has a size. So the smaller they are, the more dangerous they are. Our bodies have natural filters. We have a lot of natural immunity. But those smaller PM 2.5 and lower, the ultrafine, is where it starts to get more health dangerous. Obviously, larger particles can trigger people with allergies. And there's a lot of things that we deal with in that very ultrafine area, because a human hair might be 50 to 100 microns. So we're talking 2.5 and lower as the ones that we are really concerned about. Those can travel deep into your lungs. That's what can lead to lung cancer. That's what, a lot of these mold issues, there could be very triggering for people.
And that would include smoke from forest fires, which seems to be an annual event for half the country now, right?
Yeah, wildfires, diesel exhaust. There's a lot of areas that can create PM 2.5.
What's the best way to get PM 2.5 out of the air, no matter what it is?
Well, I mean, some type of physical filter on your inlet. So into your building, whether it's a home, your duct system has to have some type of filtration, because a lot of those particulates are coming from outside. We use a variety of technologies, including things like HEPA. So HEPA is kind of a buzzword, but that's just a rating system for a type of filter. You'll also see things like MERV. That's another different rating system for filters. So those are physical filters. I like to think of those as chain link fences. So it's a porous material. Things that are large enough are going to get stopped by that filter. And then we use things like polar ionization that are going to give particles a charge, a positive or negative charge, so they group together and become bigger. And that way they can easily stick to a HEPA filter or another type of filter or fall out of your air. So we're going to use a multi kind of a layered approach when possible to deal with something like PM 2.5.
Okay, so I'm going to make up a layered approach if I could design my own system. Oh, wait, I'm in the middle of, I bought a house that needed a little bit of remodeling until we found out that the paperwork was falsified and it was full of mold and asbestos. So now I'm building a house. Oops.
Yeah.
So I get to control my air. So I could put in like a whole bunch of MERV filters. I hear the Griffins are the best ones. What's the best MERV number for me?
somewhere in like the 12, 13 range is a pretty good one. You don't always want the highest rating because then at some point you're going to be sacrificing ventilation, so airflow or energy. And so you kind of need some layers there.
So 12 or 13. So you put that in, then do you ionize or do you ionize before the MERV?
In an ideal world, then yes, you would ionize after that.
Okay. So I went MERV, then ionization, and then HEPA if I'm like super cool.
Yeah. Most buildings are not going to put HEPA in the HVAC system, but
I will. I live there.
That'd be great. Yeah. So a lot of times we like to put our ionization or germicidal UV light in our APCO technology near the coils or the fan of the AC system, because the coils of the AC, the cooling coils, that's a source of mold growth. Yeah. So you get mold growing on those. It makes the system more inefficient, so it takes more energy. Also, you're spitting mold of spores or mycotoxins throughout your home. So we like to sometimes put our technology there when given the option.
I like to inoculate those with Homebiotic for sure, because then stuff won't want to grow. Now, Anne, have you seen patients who've fixed the air in their home change what was happening in their life?
Oh my gosh, it's foundational. I, especially in Texas, but also many other states in our country, even where you wouldn't think it would be, we have a true epidemic for mold, especially, but just even the way that we're building our homes. And there's got the outdoor pollution issue, but the indoor pollution, many people don't realize that so many things that they're bringing into their houses or the way that they're building their houses, the carpet, the wood floors, the cabinetry, so many of these are outgassing chemicals. And then there's the air coming in, depending on where you're living, that has the outdoor air pollution in it. So when we fix as much of that as we can, it can make a tremendous difference in people's health. It's we're seeing an epidemic of cardiovascular disease, cancer, autoimmune diseases, and air pollution has a big role in all of those areas as well as others.
Absolutely.
And based on the data you've seen about the effect of air pollution, which do you think will kill more people this year, dirty air or COVID?
Oh, no doubt, dirty air. I mean, we've had such a big year with just air pollution in general, but then you add onto it all the fires in many areas, and then we also went through a major African dust issue in at least a third of the country. Here in Austin, you couldn't see the sun for weeks. The air pollution was so bad. So that was the Saharan dust coming in, and that had a huge impact on my health personally. Like I couldn't go outside.
I remember the last time I went to Shanghai. And it was like going from one spaceship to another. These buildings outdoors was unacceptable. It was like fog, except it was just dirt and fumes and all. It was truly horrible. So we know that this is an issue. We know that it's getting worse, but you brought up something that wasn't there when David mentioned these particles, because volatile organics, the fumes, petroleum fumes, is different than rubber from tires and all of that. And in homes, VOCs can be really nasty, whether they're natural or synthetic and man-made. How do you, Anne, think about filtering those out? And then I want to ask you the same thing, David.
Well, the interesting thing is that I can measure some of these VOCs in some of my patients, and it's shocking. People who even think they're doing a pretty good job of managing their indoor air often aren't. So I highly recommend testing to know how well you're doing with it. But I really am seeing, especially in the last year, people who have they're running their fireplace or wood stove, or have a gas stove for their cooking, the VOCs can be extremely high. So yes, filter, but then also kind of look around it and see what you can do to reduce the air pollution in the first place.
David, I have a meter. I was just looking for it in my desk. I should have got it out ahead of the interview. And it's portable, and it costs a couple $100, and it lets you look at formaldehyde and some VOCs, not all of them, as well as PM 2.5s. And I've waved it around. And if you have one of those, the effect of cooking, especially cooking with oil, is insane on what happens, both for the 2.5s as well as VOCs. And I've also used it to measure air on airplanes. Like new airplanes have cleaner air than older airplanes, which is interesting as well. So Do you have a specific type of meter that you're recommending people work with? I just don't know the brand of mine.
So at this point, I think VOC meters are not quite there for residential use. We've actually rented multi-$1,000 VOC meters and taken them into our casino clients, and they've found 0 parts per billion VOCs in a casino because they're looking for the wrong VOCs. So when it says
it's specific, okay.
Yeah, so yours tracks formaldehyde. That will absolutely work. You can look for formaldehyde. But a lot of these will say TVOC, so total VOCs.
Not true.
I don't think they're right. So we've used VOC monitors in hotels, and we've seen incredible spikes after they say clean the hotel with deodorizer cleaning chemicals. So it goes from like 0 parts per billion to like 800 parts per billion, like instantly. But most of the VOC monitors, I think the technology isn't quite there. So if you're looking for something specific, you can do that. But otherwise, it's not going to work. So yeah, to what Dr. Shippey was saying, addressing sources of VOCs is a really good first part. Looking at the things that you're bringing into your home, and then you're trapping them because our homes are so energy efficient. And then we use things like carbon. You've mentioned charcoal before.
Carbon, yeah.
So carbon filters use the same thing. They're kind of like a sponge for chemicals.
Yeah.
We also use various forms of hydroxyl radicals, photocatalytic oxidation. Those are going to break VOCs apart into CO2 and H2O. So break them down into safe chemicals. So there's different layers of technology you can use for something like VOCs. Obviously, reducing the amount that's coming in is a good start, and then finding some type of natural mitigation process indoors to reduce those, because you're going to get off-gassing from furniture, from paint, from cooking. So there's a lot of sources inside, and in most homes, there's nothing inside that's reducing those VOCs that are being produced. And
your way to is basically breaking it down with something that's kind of like ozone, except ozone is an indoor air pollutant, but that's the catalytic stuff you're talking about well.
Ozone would be something like O3. So we a lot of our technologies are zero ozone producing, because like you mentioned, ozone itself can be a triggering agent, especially for someone with mold sensitivities. So we use a lot of ozone-free solutions, especially for residential applications. Something like a casino might be a little different. We're going to introduce a little bit of ozone into some of those applications to break down the heavy contaminants, not actually build up ozone, but that's a little bit more complicated of a conversation. But yeah, so a lot of our residential units are zero ozone producing. Something like hydroxyl radicals will only last on the surface of the catalyst. That's on some of our products. Some don't have that. And then something like carbon filtration, that's just it's like a sponge, so it's absorbing them. It's not changing them. So there's different ways to go about it.
I'm a huge fan of adding the carbon. I think it really makes a big difference for my patients and what I see for myself and in my office and that kind of thing. I think it makes a huge difference.
Okay, and these are just literally like a HEPA filter where it pulls air through, but there's a layer of carbon as well as a filter. Yeah, and I do the same thing in my home.
Yeah, like a separate filter would be carbon specific.
And I just want to emphasize how important this is. I'm such a nerd. I go through and look and see what the latest literature is on this, and it's everything from, children's lung development to all these diseases that we talked about in the first place. And if you think about it, like when you're breathing these chemicals and these small particles, they go right into your body. When we have patients in the ER and we need to get drugs into them quickly, we can give them a shot, an IV, or we can have them breathe things to get medications to a therapeutic level very quickly. So it really is something it's a huge opportunity for us to change the trajectory of our health to make sure we have clean air.
Yeah, if you look at schools that are located near large freeways, the asthma rates are, I believe one study was about 45% higher than the average. And where I live, I'm near kind of Los Angeles, Orange County. We have the Long Beach port there. They call it the diesel highway of death. So all these schools listed kind of right near there, they're often near intersections. I mean, the rates of asthma issues and, it's up on the charts. Yeah.
Well, and there's been even studies looking at breast cancer. Are you more likely to get breast cancer if you're close to these highways? And it's a tremendous increase.
Mm-hmm. There's also some interesting studies that show that children's IQ raises above the 5th floor. And some of the theories involve noise pollution. where that can affect brain development. But the predominant theory is that a lot of the particulate matter, rubber, fumes, all that stuff, it just can't rise that high. So you get a little bit more clean air, and you actually don't retard neurological growth as much as you could, which is shocking. But it seems like the right solution would be wherever you live in a building, especially if you're near a road or in a city, would be filter the heck out of your air indoors. Sure. And I know we have a list of resources and discounts for everyone at the conference. Part of my job here was to make it so you invest a little bit to come to the conference. You get to connect with thousands of people around the planet, and then you get to save way more than that amount of money on the most effective tools that have the highest return. And I know I've used your Air Angel, David. You guys are sold out because of COVID. But I'm sure they'll be coming back, and we have some other links.
Just a couple weeks, yeah.
Just a couple weeks. So we have some links for everyone. They're here at the bottom of the screen. I'm sure the team is putting them in for us right now. And
I would say at least put one in your bedroom. You're spending hopefully at least 8 hours getting good sleep, but the other health hack. And if you're going to put one anywhere, having clean air where you're sleeping while your body is actually doing that extra detoxification, it's a game changer.
Yeah. That's exactly what we recommend.
All right, so do it in your bedroom. I have one in the kids' bedrooms, one in ours. The other one is in the kitchen. I truly think, even if you have your hood on, there's so much crap that comes out of your pans. And mine failed last night. I was doing a special kind of Japanese rice, and it sucked the water up so fast from the bottom of the pan that it burned. And my daughter says, "That's the weirdest steam ever." I'm like, "No!" And we added water right away. But it stank out that kitchen for 2 hours, and we all had sore throats and we're coughing. And I had a filter on, so we opened the windows and blew it out as fast as we could. But just something like that affects you for a couple days, right? What should I have done better? Because you have an acute release of particulate matter in the form of smoke in your house. Give me the emergency plan. What would you do, David?
Well, the more tools you have at your disposal, the better. So you could actually move multiple units to the one room to deal with kind of a peak issue. And we do that with a lot of scenarios where we might recommend putting multiple units in a single room, closing the door, letting it just work there to provide that mitigation. Opening your window, turning a vent on, any of those things to increase the ventilation, so the airflow, dilution, all of those things are good tools. So.
Now, my kids' school, we've had an air quality of 11 on a scale of 1 to 10. In other words, beyond the charts bad, because all the smoke from Washington blew up here where we live. It looked like there's fog outside, but it's smoke. Right. But because of COVID, they required that the kids sit in classrooms with all the windows open, the doors open during air quality like that. Mm-hmm. What was a higher risk, smoke or coronavirus in a place where there's 7 cases on the entire island? What do you think, Ann? You're a doctor.
Well, I would say since smoke actually lowers your immune system, it makes you more immunocompromised. The argument would be keep the air clean so that you have a strong immune system, so that if you do get exposed to COVID, that you fight it off.
Yeah. I like that perspective. What we did is I actually had my daughter stay home from school for a couple of days. I'm like, this is actually worse than smoking a pack of cigarettes. This is not acceptable. And the level of just bureaucratic paranoia in order to drive that, it's just not okay. Yeah. So
there was an image of a CrossFit gym in San Francisco. The entire sky is orange behind them, and they're being forced to work out on the sidewalk, in a busy intersection. And it's just this apocalyptic sky, and here they are working out, trying to be healthy.
If only we had relative risk allowed by law, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So one of the things too, Dave, is since the glutathione enzymes get affected by air pollution, bumping up the glutathione when we have these big exposures can make a huge difference.
You actually read my mind, Ann, because my next question for you was, you do that a lot. It's kind of spooky. In case you guys don't know, and I know Ann, she's been on the show. We're good friends. But what I'm interested in here is, what are the supplements or mitigation strategies inside the body that you would recommend doing when people have been exposed to different kinds of pollution, including smoke, including like fireplace smoke and stuff like that, and including mold and including the other household stuff you might get? So what do you do inside the body to hack that?
So I like to think about it as opening up the spigots to let the pollutants out so that they don't build up and tip over the barrel. So the liposomal glutathione is one of my absolute favorites. Don't leave home without it, or Homebiotic.
Well,
to make
not
sure.
internally. Homebiotic is for the environment, not inside
Exactly.
the body.
But those are two non-negotiables.
You're saying you always travel with those? I do too, actually.
I always travel with those. Yeah. And then some type of charcoal or clay, so some type of binder to also pull it out. And then liver support, so things like NAC, milk thistle to support the liver process. And then I really find mitochondrial support is tremendous because the mitochondria need the fuel to do the, help the cells do the work. So things like CoQ10, carnitine, D-ribose, all my favorite mitochondrial support.
Ketoprime, probably oxaloacetate.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Right? Yes.
Okay.
Ketoprime. And then one of the really important things is phosphatidylcholine to help do cellular repair of the cell membrane and the mitochondrial membrane. So it just depends on where you are in that spectrum. If you're pretty healthy and you have a little exposure with the glutathione and the binders are great, but if you feel like, I need to do more because I'm being exposed for days and weeks and months, I would do the more expanded support.
Do you mean intravenous phosphatidylcholine? Or just oral?
Well, it depends on how symptomatic you are. If you're having some pretty significant symptoms, I do like the IV PC. But a lot of times just taking a really nice dose of the oral can be super helpful.
You have a brand called Every Life Well. Do you make a phosphatidylcholine?
I do. I
shocking.
do.
Well, you should have mentioned that. I don't know. I don't even know if we have a discount code for that. You just recently launched it, but I trust you to make good stuff. So
absolutely, it's great.
Okay. In fact, you have to send me some. I don't have a good dose of a good supplier for oral phosphatidylcholine, and that's something that I believe in. I've taken it for years in various places. Okay.
I'll send you my favorite. Yes.
David, do you see anything that works particularly well for mold? And then I'm going to ask Ann the same thing.
So for mold, we typically recommend combining H13 or H14 HEPA, so that would be the upper end of the HEPA spectrum, with polar ionization. Polar ionization would be ours, but a HEPA filter is going to be trapping the spores. Something like polar ionization is going to be grouping the spores, and suppressing the mold growth to begin with. And then if you have something like carbon filtration to absorb some of those mycotoxins, the chemicals, but the polar ionization would do that as well. So we have some proprietary solutions, but something like HEPA is going to be trapping those, so you're not breathing the spores in. You need something to deal with the chemicals. And then, our technologies are going to give different benefits, but
Okay, got it. And you have some really advanced stuff out there that I would highly recommend for mold. And for other people, you already have something on your furnace, and you can at least replace with a higher MERV filter, even though it might blow a little bit harder. I always missed my filters with Homebiotic as well, because Homebiotic's the bacteria that eats mold. So if it does accumulate in there, you're not going to start it growing there. And I also should probably have disclosed earlier, I just didn't think of it. Ann is on the advisory board for Homebiotic. It's a company that I started about 5-6 years ago. And it's one of those things where I needed it for my own life to support my travel. So I try to make stuff I can't do. And what do you do for mold with air specifically? Like, what works best for you and your patients?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is finding the source of it. Is it in the home, hidden somewhere? Usually if people know about it, if they have had a known leak, they've taken care of it. But if it's a hidden problem, we need to find whether it's in their home, in their car, in their work, in the school, find the source of it and get rid of it. Because usually by the time I'm seeing patients, they're feeling the effects of it. But really for everyone's health, if you have, you really suspect that you have mold in one of your environments, it's really, really important to try to get rid of as much as you possibly can, and then do the filtering to get rid of it, because the mycotoxins and the MVOCs are very, very difficult to clean out of air. And those are the size that really go right into the body through the lungs and also through the skin. So, and then once you've got the mold fixed, then, use the preventive measures, really control the humidity in your buildings. If there is a leak, get it dried within 24 to 48 hours, and then use Homebiotic to keep the microbiome of the building so it's robust and you're less likely to have a problem.
Based on the research I did for Moldy, the documentary, by the way, we'll put a link in that for you guys here. It's free to watch. But I interviewed so many experts about mold and about what happens to you. I'm firmly convinced that at least 70% of schools have a mold problem. And that means our kids are exposed to them. And maybe we are when we go in for a school event and gymnasiums that aren't regularly air conditioned. They're closed off some of the time. And so many more buildings after COVID, you seal it up for 6 months. You wonder what's going to happen when you come back in. Well, it's going to smell like a mop. So when you don't own the place and you're a parent and you know your kid's school has mold, and what would you do as a parent? And then David, I want to know what people should tell the school to do to cost effectively clean up their air. So Anne, you go first.
Yeah, schools are a big issue. Most school systems, once they realize that there's a problem, they want to fix it because they realize they don't want to be poisoning the kids. They're even on the EPA website, there are studies showing that kids don't learn as well when there's mold in the environment. So usually if you get a really good inspector to come into the school, find the problem, there have been huge problems in Texas with air handlers being installed improperly. And so then the school system has to, go back to the air handling company or the installer and get it fixed and done correctly. So it's just one of those things. Once people really understand that the mycotoxins are, increasing the risk for autoimmune diseases, cancer, all these things, they don't want their kids to get exposed every day in the schools.
The good news there is that teachers who work in that environment all the time, they don't want it either. So I've found that a lot of teachers are receptive, but a lot of administrative people with budget control aren't that receptive. But if enough people know, enough parents are on board, it becomes a liability issue. So if your kid's school has a problem, it's worth doing, I would believe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we see the full spectrum of schools' intentionality with air. Some don't think about it at all, will not listen to anybody talking about it, and some are being very serious about it. But a lot of times it is the teachers or parents advocating that's pushing them towards action. And so there's a lot that you can do. And we have teachers that come to us for solutions, and we'll work with them, and they can put a unit in their room, or a parent will do the same with a kid, even if the administration is not willing to. And we work with universities that go all in, or schools that go all in, and a lot don't, or they can't afford it. So there's different ways to go about it. Yeah, but
beautiful.
Yeah, there is a really big issue going on with several universities around the country not addressing the mold issues, and the parents are having to take legal action.
Most universities have a mold problem. If you're in a university administrator listening to this, I'm sorry, this is a big smoking gun. It's massive liability. Like, you have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, did I just say it was massive liability? Now you know, and you have to take action. All right.
Yeah, and as Dr. Shippey said, and the EPA has studies directly linking air quality with math and reading scores.
Yes, and ADD and autism and just this huge number of things. So, and it's not just the mold, it's just the particulates. So I'm so happy you brought that up. And of course, for adults, we get those same symptoms too. And Alzheimer's it's tied to, and Parkinson's. It's a smoking gun. Oh, wait, is that why they call it smoking? Now, on that note, we're putting links for both of you so people can find out more information and practices in Austin. And David, you're a global company, hypoair.com. And I appreciate both of you being here for this panel for the Biohacking Conference. This is that other side of food and air. We spend so much time thinking about the food, and you have to get that right. But if you mix that food with dirty air, you might not get optimal results. And now you know. Guys, thank you for being on the panel.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Great to be here. Thanks, Dave.